Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hi, Baby Joel here. I got 2 dogs. They're never late for their dinner. We named them Timex and Rolex. They're both watchdogs. There we go. Baby Joel strikes again. We have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about, there's a friend of mine. His name is Tony Diekemper. He is a consultant. He works with organizations, organizational development, and all kinds of different layers in that regard. And he likes to come in. I guess the best way to describe it is when you're in a jar, you can't read the label. And he helps organizations read the label, and many times brings up uncomfortable topics, issues, and things that need to be addressed in an organization. And so it's a real interest. We're gonna have a very interesting show. We're gonna talk about his childhood. What helped to inform some of his thinking, and just his approach, which may appear a little bit iconoclastic in some ways, but very interesting. So we're going to have a fascinating show with Tony tonight. If you own a business, if you are thinking about owning a business, or you're a CEO or someone in the C-suites in an organization, you want to lean in tonight to this show. Now, remember, whenever you're watching this, if you're live, of course, we have a great opportunity for you to ask questions. So get your fingers ready on your keyboards to ask those questions. And our producer, Mel Albin, he will determine if your question is germane to the topic for tonight. And if it's not, boom, you're not going to come on. If it is, boom, you'll be here. And we'll welcome you with your questions. So when you're watching this, please look below. If you're watching this in a podcast format, subscribe, like, comment. Come on, comment and share your thoughts about the show. And you can look above, and there's a QR code. If you're on a laptop or a regular computer, you can bring out your cell phone, and that'll take you to something called chiefmischiefmaker.com. And you'll learn about what it means to be a mischief maker, the definition. In fact, we're going to do a little mischief making tonight, I think, with Tony on working with organizations. And anyway, we have a real great time this evening that we're going to have with Tony. We're going to listen to a song I wrote. It's called Bulldog with a Smile. There's maybe some autobiographical aspects in it, but I'll let you be the judge of that. So Mel, let's listen to that song, Bulldog with a Smile.
I'm on the bulldog with a smile, never backing down, working hard with laughter, spreading joy around. Through the blood, sweat, and tears, I find a way to laugh, but I'll never bow down to the golden calf. Integrity's my compass, guides me true. In a world of shortcuts, I see things through. I balance time like a juggler in the ring, knowing when to grind and when to let my heart sing. I've seen the highs and lows, the sun and the rain, but I keep on pushing, I don't complain. With a heart full of kindness and hands ready to give, I show them what it means to truly live. I value what matters, God, family, and friends. The love we share, it never ends. In a world of hurry, take it slow. blood, sweat, and tears, I find a way to laugh. But I'll never bow down to the golden calf. Yeah, I'm a bulldog with a smile. Come what may, with integrity and humor, I'll find my way. I walk that extra country mile, 'cause I'm a bulldog with a smile. I'm a bulldog with a smile.
Well, we got a bulldog with a smile. That's a song I wrote, mostly the songs. If you've heard any of my songs before, if you go to the link tree above, you'll see about 16 or 17 of the songs I've written and produced. One of the things that I really love is blues, and this was kind of a departure into country. So I hope you enjoyed that country vibe of the bulldog with a smile. Now, Tony, come on, let's get on. Let's start doing this thing. Tony's a good friend of mine. He's been around the horn a few times, and I'll thank you, Dennis. Dennis, thank you. Love the song. Great country blues. Okay, man. Good enough. So, and by the way, if you do ask a question or make a comment, please tell us where you're from, what part of the world you're from, so we can tailor the response to where you are. Now, Tony, I want us to talk a little bit about being a consultant. I use the metaphor of, when someone's in a jar or an organization's in a jar, there's you kind of look from the outside, there's a label on the outside, and a consultant comes in, reads the label. But I know something about you, that you are not comfortable in just being a consultant. I think some people liken it to a consultant that says, "Can I borrow your pen?" and then sells it back to them. You're not that kind of guy. But tell us a little bit about your childhood, and maybe if you can, when you were a kid, who asked the uncomfortable questions, or or were you someone who asked the uncomfortable questions, or were you just someone who quietly observed people and analyzed and figured things out? I think you're on mute. Tony, I think you're on mute. So while Tony is figuring this out, we can't hear him. You can check into the mute button on your audio. Tony, they're saying for you to log out and log back in. So while Tony is logging out, logging back in, one of the things about being a consultant, I'll just show you something. This is really a workbook that I used, and I'm not going to show you any names here, but you can get I'm going to do it upside down, but you can just see it's just chock full of addresses and names, contact information. It's like my CRM. And this is how I built my business for 30 years. Here's another one that you can see. There's a lot of handwriting on here. This, because I started my business way back, 30 years. I did this for 30 years. So it has been quite a challenge. But when anyone is a consultant, you have to have a kind of a stomach, a cast iron stomach. And I think, Tony, you would agree with that. Do you have your audio running again?
Hopefully we're working now. Can you hear me?
It's beautiful. I hear you loud and clear. Your melodious voice.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have to be honest, Joel. I'm still trying to get over baby Joel. I was not prepared for that. So it's going to take me a minute to get over that. That was really something special.
Yeah, it's he's a kind of a strange character, but he crops up in every show.
Well, I
So,
like it. So
so
you asked about my childhood. Is that a good place to start?
yes. Were you the one that asked the uncomfortable questions, or were you an observer? Or
I
both?
hate to say this, but it's both.
Mm-hmm.
So, a couple things of interest about my childhood. Number one, I was and am number 8 of 12 children.
Mm.
So when you're number 8 of 12, especially in the era that I grew up, you were taught very clearly that, we were supposed to be barely seen and not heard. Right. So that was pretty normal for us. And in my home, I was definitely one of the very quiet ones. I was extremely shy. People don't believe that when I tell them. So I was always looking and observing and paying attention. But I was the one who asked all the questions when I wasn't at home.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I learned really early on in my life, probably by the time I was 6 or 7, I was much more interested in speaking to adults than I was other children. In fact, I wasn't good at relating to children when I was growing up. I just found them kind of not interesting, and I really wanted to have conversations with adults because they were much better at answering my questions.
So you were 8 of 12.
Yeah.
So kind of flesh that out a little bit more. Were you there a group within your family that were the quiet observers, or the people play different roles, the comedian, the one that gets in trouble, and all these different things. What role were you playing, do you think, in your family system?
So the role that I was trying to play was the peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because it was not a great home environment. It was oftentimes somewhat violent. So for me, I was the one who was always trying to get the difficulties, the arguing and the fighting to come to an end, and really just try and be the peacemaker. That was really what I was trying to do most of my time as a child, actually.
Were there times when keeping the peace came at the cost of truth?
So that is an incredibly powerful question and very insightful. And I will tell you that that was one of the great sources of my pain as a child. Wasn't that the peace came at the price of truth. It was that we didn't have the real conversations about the problems at all. So it wasn't that we didn't speak the truth about the issues. It's that we never talked about them. They happened and then they were never discussed. So the truth was not being spoken, but it wasn't in lieu of something else. There were just no conversations. And it's interesting because you talked about sort of being a consultant and asking the hard questions. I think that one of my motivators as I became an adult was I wanted to deal with real issues because I never got to do that as a child. So if there was peace, it was because we didn't ever have real conversations. And that really drove me crazy as a kid.
Was there anyone in your life in your earlier years that kind of helped you understand what true leadership is, or was there anyone that helped you challenge authority that wasn't the proper type of authority?
Boy, that's a good question. I think the first part of the question, in terms of somebody that really helped me understand leadership, I have to say was one of my soccer coaches. It was a really formative time. It was in those teenage years, really going from early teens, 13, 14, all the way up until 19. My soccer coach was a gentleman named Roger Tabor. Roger still lives in Las Vegas, where I grew up, and he was a great coach. He was a great model for me. He was a great leader and did an amazing job of building a group of young men into a team that was really, really special. And to this day, we have great relationships from that. It's the only team I played on where the people are still in relationships. So I think that was
incredible.
Really the first blessing things I've experienced was Roger Tabor. Yeah.
Did you have reunions, get back together, or get on a Zoom or something like that with some of the friends?
It still does happen. In fact, there was a 60th or 61st birthday party a few months ago, and there's another one coming up in a month, but they're all in Vegas, so I don't make a lot of them, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Now, so there was a reward for conformity in your family. Was there any type of a situation where that helped to inform dissent, asking questions, honest questions, and rewarding those honest questions with honest answers outside the family if necessary?
That didn't happen, unfortunately. I guess I was a rebel in the sense that I didn't want to keep quiet. And I don't know if this is actually relevant to your question, but it's the first thing that I thought of, so I'll share it. I remember when I was 14 years old, I remember the day that my mom was finally able to leave my dad. And all of those of us that lived there were going with her. And we were thankful for that. My dad, we all stayed home from school that day. My dad came home in the middle of the day from work, which was very unusual. And he walked in and we were all packing, getting ready to leave. And he looked around and he looked at us and he said, "What's going on?" And as usual, nobody said anything. And I was 14 at the time, and I was pretty fed up of being afraid and being quiet all the time. So I just spoke up and I said, "We're leaving." And he said, "Who's we?" And I said, "Everybody that wants to go." And to this day, I don't know where those words came from, but I just couldn't be quiet any longer. And I just spoke what I felt in my heart. And I think that hit him so hard, he just sat down and cried. And I spoke the truth, not with anger, but with love. But it felt so liberating to actually be able to say that in that moment. I think it was a defining moment for me.
Were there discussions in the family prior to that in order to coalesce the logistical elements of leaving?
Yeah. So my mom had told us what was going on, and she had finally been able to secure enough money to get a place to live. And she had been talking to my dad for many years about the need to change his behavior, and he just wouldn't. So she just decided it was time because the abuse was just too much.
Hitchhiking off that, what were some situations in your life in the early years that taught you that tension, when handled well, could actually be productive?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by early life, because I don't think I believed that. I don't think I learned that or believed that until I was in my late 20s. And I know when it happened. So there was a group of people that I worked with at that time in my life. I'd gone to work for a large company here in Maryland known as Aerotech. And I was working with 3 different gentlemen at that organization who were all feeding into me, wonderful men with great hearts. And I think at that point in my life, the only thing I had learned was that conflict was bad and to avoid it at all costs. So I like to speak the truth, but I didn't want conflict. And there was a gentleman I worked with who was really an amazing professional at that point in time. His name was Rick Samuels. And he began to teach me about me. And he taught me that it's one thing to avoid conflict. It's another thing to engage in conflict, but it's a different thing altogether to embrace conflict. And many people have been through programs on, conflict remediation or how to resolve conflict. Rick taught me that conflict is a constant. You just have to get really good at how to engage constructively in it. It doesn't have to be destructive. The only thing I'd really known up to that point in my life was destructive conflict. So the idea that conflict could be constructive and actually enjoyable was something that was completely foreign to me. And actually to this day, it's one of the things that I teach. It's one of the core elements in my communications program. Is not only is it a constant, but we can harness it. And if you get good at harnessing it with mutual trust and respect, it can actually be enjoyable. And so that was a trend. That was a transformational point in my life at that point. That when Rick taught me that, it was very hard to shift my paradigm, but once I did, it was amazing to me. There's a whole new world that opened up, kind of like your jar analogy, I could not see that label at all up until that point.
Mm-hmm. Dealing with leaders and managers and all kinds of folks in organizations, many times it's what's not being said in the room. It's the body language, it's neuro-linguistic patterns and things like that, looking up, looking down when responding to a question.
Yeah.
When did you first start noticing, what wasn't being said in a room that helped to inform the way you approach situations like that in corporations?
That's a great question. So just to be really, I guess, simple about it, I think that because of my childhood, I had a keen sense of that because we were always not talking about things. And so it was really obvious to me. And that was one of the first things I noticed in organizations. In fact, it's the reason that I built the communications program that I do, because I went into a corporate organization for the first time. And I observed that people would say two different things. In one context, if you have a one-on-one conversation, they'll tell you one story. You go into a meeting and they say something else.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask people, like, why are you doing that? That's not consistent. You're contradicting yourself. And, the answer I got was, well, that's the way it is around here. You have to do that to get by in corporate life. You can't just say what you're thinking all the time or you're going to get in trouble. And I just thought to myself, that's ridiculous. So I would be in meetings and I would be asking questions when I already knew the answers because I knew people had said things, but they didn't want to say them in the forum. And so I think I developed that awareness through my childhood experiences. And I think when I got into the corporate world, I was probably a blunt instrument because I had no tolerance for people not speaking up and not speaking the truth, that I would be very direct about making it happen. I think I've learned to be a little bit more elegant and a little bit more patient with how to do that now. There's ways to do it that aren't painful for people. But at the time, for me, it was just like, come on, we're going to have a real conversation. I don't care if you like it. And it's okay if it's painful, which wasn't great. But I was committed to speaking the truth in love and having people say what they had to say and hearing it. And unfortunately, that is one of the biggest problems that exist today in organizations, Joel. As you know, most organizations, it's very hard to have a real conversation. You can have a real conversation with the one or two people that you're close to or your friends that work there, but that's it. And that's ridiculous. It's a terrible indictment of our corporate organizations that we can't have real conversations. And so just foundational to everything I do is we've got to have real conversations if we're going to solve real problems.
So how did you shave the edges off of the intolerance? I don't know if that's the right word, that you felt early on in working with organizations. How did you soften those edges without losing the essence of what you wanted to communicate?
Yeah. I think the real answer is there's probably 5 or 6 answers. So I'll do my best to summarize them quickly, but I will start with, let's give credit where it's due. It probably wasn't me softening the edges. It was the people in my life who were trying to help me. So first and foremost, it was my wife saying, why are you behaving like that? You're not being a moron. We've been married, next month will be 36 years. So she's been the biggest influence on me in my life's journey and the most patient person in my life. So she's given me the most feedback and helped me learn and grow the most when I couldn't see what I was doing. At the time at Allegiance Group, there were people there that were really committed to helping me learn and grow. Number one was Bernie Bisciotti, who I worked with for a number of years, who's got just an incredible, one of the biggest hearted people I've ever met in my life. And we were committed to feedback at Allegiance Group. So that was really a wonderful thing. Bernie gave me lots of feedback and he helped me, just like you mentioned, he helped me see myself in the mirror in a way that I couldn't up until that point in time. So Bernie helped me. He was tremendous. We're still friends to this day. And then later on, another incredible friend of mine named Richard Quinn, who made his career with Allstate and Sears and led the transformation at Sears back in the 90s. And so those two men are both still in my life today. And I think those are probably the two of the people who really did the most to shape me and help soften those edges. And obviously, God's grace was the number one element of that he put people in my life like my wife and Bernie and Rick who helped me learn and grow. That was tremendous. It was just incredible. obviously still a lot of learning to do, but to be able to have conversations with people and help them get things out in an elegant way that's loving and caring is something that's essential. And so I definitely did not have that approach 30 years ago. So I learned a lot about that.
What's the most common systemic issue in companies that they know exists but hope it magically disappears in some way?
Wow, phenomenal question. I think that it's a really good question. It's hard to say one. I think I can think of three immediately that whenever I say them, people laugh. And if people are laughing, that means that they get the joke. So a lot of times when I'm introduced to organizations, I'll say, "Hi, I'm Tony Diekemper. Have you guys ever noticed how dysfunctional organizations are?" And everybody laughs. Yeah. There's a dysfunctionality to the way that humans engage in organizations and groups. And it doesn't matter what kind of organization it is, from a family to a nonprofit to a commercial organization. Dysfunction is the way humans normally function. And so that's one of them. The second one is just the thing we've been talking about, which is communication failures. We don't communicate well, we don't make decisions well, and we don't implement decisions well. And it's a norm and everybody knows it. And when you ask people what's going on, like, well, that's just the way it is and we can't change it. And so the constant lack of effective communication and direction and decision-making in organizations is a huge problem that just gets ignored because it's so common. And then I think the third thing is the unbelievable lack of clear prioritization in organizations. The amount of time and energy that gets wasted in companies by people not having clear direction is just staggering. If it was on a balance sheet, somebody would be fired immediately. I mean, it's just awful what a lack of clear priorities there are in most organizations. Obviously, there's some great organizations who do well with all three of those things. But if we're talking about the middle of the bell curve, those are the big three that I think of.
Why do companies and organizations normalize dysfunction? Because it's so familiar, or, because I mean, there's no safe place. It could be religious, as you mentioned. It could be a family system. It could be a neighborhood association, HOA, anything like that. But why does that happen?
Again, fantastic question, Joel. So I'm going to give you my strong opinions based on 35 years of organizational work and having worked with an enormous amount of great leaders and great educators over that time. My strong opinion about how to frame the answer to that is that's what humans do. We do it as individuals. We norm to what we believe we can't affect. And so if you go into an organization and you're watching everybody else not speak up and not speak the truth, you go, well, I guess that's what I got to do here to get along. And it's either get along or leave. And so I've had that conversation thousands and thousands of times with different employees over the years. If it's not good, why don't you fix it? Well, because I can't. Well, then why don't you go get a different job? Well, that's a lot of work and I don't want to do that either. So you'll just accept this suboptimal condition because you don't feel like driving to change because you're afraid that it won't work and there'll be negative consequences. But you won't change your circumstances because you're thinking, well, that's a lot of work and the other place probably isn't going to be any better. Mm-hmm. And having had that conversation specifically so many thousands of times, that's my belief, is that humans norm to dysfunction because it's easier than trying to drive change. And we prefer the devil we know to the devil we don't know, right? I'm sure you've heard that. And I think that's all it is. It's an individual human problem. It's not a collective human problem. It's one that happens individually that manifests collectively.
Mm-hmm. We're at the top of the hour, and we're going to take a break for our sponsor, the Rosetta Universe. And so when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to nudge let's say an ocean-going vessel that takes, let's say, 30 miles to turn around 180 degrees. What kind of nudges that would take a larger corporation. But let's go right now to Rosetta Universe. Hi, I'm Joel Freeman. I just finished unboxing this stunning Jack Johnson World Boxing Heavyweight Championship Legacy belt that I helped to design. And I'm seeing this for the first time, and I am astonished by the handmade craftsmanship made with premium, genuine leather and bronze. And guess what? The Freeman Institute Foundation is making only 700 of these hand-numbered belts designed to honor Jack Johnson and to educate a whole generation that has never even heard about the many exploits of Jack Johnson outside the boxing ring. Find out how you can order this as an unforgettable gift for yourself or for someone else that you love. Well, you may be wondering, how is it possible the Rosetta Universe is sponsoring this show and we're talking about Jack Johnson? Well, here's the belt, Jack Johnson belt. Actually, we designed this for a couple of reasons, but the main reason is that this is an incentive gift. And so every penny that comes in, it's a donation to the foundation so that we can do the Rosetta Universe project. And already a number of people have donated to the foundation. It's all tax deductible if you're in the United States. If you're outside the United States, well, you can donate and you'll feel good about it and you'll receive a belt. We'll work that out. But there's only 700 of these we're making, as was mentioned, worldwide. And so that's the name of that tune. And you'll want one of these. Every man cave needs a Jack Johnson belt. You know it. Come on. And if you don't know anyone in your, if you know someone in your life, let's say I don't like boxing. It's too bloody, too this, too that. You know somebody who's a boxing fanatic who needs and wants one of these. It's the ultimate gift for anyone who has everything. And so we will now flip over to our topic this evening with Tony Diekemper. By the way, don't forget to go to the QR code above and comment, subscribe, like. Tony, I guess we've got someone from, let's see, Dennis. He says, I do corporate consulting. Well, Dennis, you have a cast iron stomach, if that's what you do. and you're simpatico. We welcome you. I do corporate consulting, and I have witnessed that institutional dysfunction can paradoxically aid efficiency and yield to better outcomes by forcing the development of faster informal networks, promoting local adaptability, and encouraging shadow systems that bypass slow, rigid, or corrupt. I like that word, corrupt, bureaucratic processes. Tony, what's on your mind? What's happening inside of you as you're hearing this, reading this? Your audio is not working. I think we're back. You might have to, I don't know what's going on here. I think you might have to go out and come back in again. And I'll do some soft shoe here. So, Dennis, one of the things that I think on this, and Tony will be back with us in a few moments here, is that there's a way to approach this. First of all, when I come into an organization over the years, 30 years, I worked over 58 countries around the world, 7 words, dealing with people who drive you crazy, took me to 58 countries around the world. And I refused, if it wasn't just speaking, but I was working organizationally, I refused to work with an organization if the leadership wanted me to go fix them. So I'm going to shut up here and Tony, take it over.
Well, great point. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, the last thing you said is absolutely perfect. When I was consulting full-time, people would say, I just need you to come in and fix my people. I'd be like, that's great. I'm not going to do that. So
See ya.
you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So first of all, yeah, thank you, Joel. I wanted to comment on Dennis Peters' comment. First of all, I think that he makes a great point that these types of things do occur. And so he talks about the efficiency and better outcomes by forcing the development of faster informal networks. And I think those things certainly do occur. Here's some of the issues that I've seen, though. And if you read Good to Great by Jim Collins, he spoke specifically about how Winston Churchill developed the informal network that bypassed his generals to feed him the data about what was going on day to day in the war, because he didn't want that to filter through his generals who might skew the data. So I think that's an example of what Dennis is saying, and a very good one. But I think the issue is still, if we have to develop informal systems to get around the fundamental thing that's in place to be effective, we have a bigger cost and a bigger net negative than we do the benefits of these things. So I think they happen because they're necessary, and I've certainly seen individuals and organizations do that. But if we have a big, slow, rigid, corrupt bureaucratic process, then we're paying a big price for that. I think that's the fundamental problem, and that's the kind of problem that I love to solve. So when you talked about it, I would ask two questions, Joel. If an entrepreneur asked me to go in and fix his people, I would say, that's great, I'm happy to do it. Let's see, who hired him? I mean, I'm in charge. I own the company. I hired him. Who do you think hired him, you knucklehead? Like, okay, that's great. I just wanted to check, and just for the record, who manages them? Well, I do. I hired them and I manage them. And they don't listen to you? No, they don't listen to me. Well, then I think I found the problem. You're actually the problem. Now, the funny thing is, I would literally say that to people. Because, again, I like being the blunt instrument, and I don't mind speaking the truth to people like that. And a lot of times when you're speaking with the owner of a company or the CEO, you have to be that direct to get them to listen. And when that happened, when I asked those two questions, I immediately found out whether or not they wanted to be part of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were like, you know what, you're right, I get it. I got to be part of the process. Like, you not only part, you have to lead that process and you have to own it. And so it was a really quick way to find out, is there an opportunity to make something happen here? Or if you genuinely want me to go fix them, you need to find somebody else, or people who can do much less work for a lot more money than me. So you should go get some of those guys.
That's a beautiful approach, I think, because there's no sense dancing around the issues or wasting your time or their time. Get right to the issue, and then pretty quickly. I know when Peter Drucker says this, he says, and I pulled this up on my cell phone, he says, only three things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. Speak to that.
Wow, you didn't tell me you were going to quote Drucker. I mean, everybody's got to quote Drucker. So I will speak to that, and I'll give you I think this goes right along with that. Unfortunately, I used this quote yesterday. One of the things that Drucker said about management is most of what is considered management is just making somebody else's job difficult. So I think that just compounds. So what you just said, it's true of human organizations. Organizations are just groups of people trying to do something. And if you look at the fundamental dynamics, when you get humans together, it doesn't make any difference what kind of organization it is. You have all the same problems. I've worked with churches. I've worked with soccer teams. I've worked with spouses. I've worked with nonprofits. I've worked with commercial organizations. All of the fundamental organizational problems are exactly the same. Everybody wants to tell you that it's different by industry and it's different by that. It's not. The human problems are the same. The organizational problems are the same. The operational problems are different. The organizational problems are exactly the same. So what Drucker said is spot on. We should expect ineffectiveness when we get people together. The purpose of management and leadership is to provide clarity and direction, and then support, and to position people for success. It's been my experience, it's extremely rare that organizations set people up to fail. It's extremely common that they don't set them up to succeed. So if you look at those three issues that Drucker talked about, Most managers don't see it as their job to set their teams up to succeed. Great managers and great leaders always feel that way, and they work hard to do it. And when someone works for a manager and a leader that's setting them up for success, they treasure it. But the reality is that's not the norm in management and leadership, unfortunately. So Drucker's spot on, and leadership is over what I like to talk about when I work in organizations. We're here to build disciplines. Mm-hmm. Because every organizational problem that you have is solved with some sort of discipline. And discipline is a fantastic word for the sum total of a solution of what you have to change. And discipline is overcoming human nature and doing what's best and right. So whether that's an individual problem or a collective problem, a group. So if you have problems as an individual human being, you have to build discipline. If you have problems as an organization, you have to build disciplines within the organization. And that's how you overcome those three problems that Drucker was talking about.
And that's beautiful. That's eloquent. When it comes to discipline, I think it all comes out of like the mission statement. When an organization puts together a mission statement, they're not going off to some resort, just to kind of kick ideas around. It really, every word is pregnant with meaning. And so what I like to do with organizations, and I'm sure you do too, is I like to ask them up front, what is your mission statement? And then what I do is I actually parse every word. So A versus the, or the versus a. The is a definite article. A is optional. It could be a this, a that, an idea, one of many. And then I look for action verbs. And every action verb, it's like, wow, you mean you are going to strive? Let's kind of take a look at that word. Let's live. Let's get in that word. What does that mean? You're going to strive toward, or you're going to benefit some XYZ type of person. And so by taking a look at every word, what I like to do is to make sure that everybody there knows this is not something you're going to go to Walmart and buy a cheap 8x10 frame and put it up on some wall somewhere to gather dust. This is a living, breathing document. And if you stop someone in the middle of sweeping the floor and you say, why are you doing what you're doing? They should be able to relate that exactly to the mission statement that the leadership team put together. And to say, I am doing this so I can free people up to do whatever the mission is for the organization. And it brings meaning to everything. So I'm going to shut up. What are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, it's very well said. And I think, as I hear you speak about it, Joel, I hear a little bit of a should be condition. That's what a mission should be, or what a vision should be. And I've done a lot of work with organizations building what I call charters. Charters, the sum total of the organizational document. So a mission is part of a charter, whether or not an organization has a vision statement or a purpose statement, that's part of the charter. But I'm going to give you my perspective on something that's a little bit different than that, because I think it's much more significant in terms of driving behavior. In my experience going into organizations, once you get past a certain size, people don't even really know what the mission
exactly yes
or what it means. And if you ask them what it means to them, the answer is nothing. Those guys did that, and I don't know. So I'll tell you what I really focus on, and I focus on this in two parts. What I think is far more important than the mission statement or the vision statement is the value statements.
Beautiful.
And so when I work in organizations, what we talk about is what is values? What does values mean? And values are the things that you say you hold most important. And so this becomes a very simple ruler, a measurement to test the organization's behaviors. Because if they say that they value certain things, and then you ask them about the decisions that they're making, you can very quickly look at that and say, okay, are you living your stated values or not? So the way that I think about it, if you're in an entrepreneurially led organization where the founder is the leader of the company, the values of that organization are coming directly from the founder and the decisions that founder makes. That's the way it works, whether they're the same ones that are on paper or not. Sometimes the stated and the actual match, sometimes they don't. I've worked with founders who said, Tony, if I wrote my values down, nobody would want to work there. Well, what do you mean? Well, what I really care, and I've had people say this to me very directly, what I really care about is working hard and making a ton of money. I don't care about all that other stuff. But I can't write that down because nobody would like it. Like, well, then guess what? You're going to have a problem for a long time. Yeah. It's going to be uncomfortable because people will see that those are really the things that you value. So if there's a disconnect between the stated and the actual, people will eventually see that. But if you can actually build a set of organizational values that reflect the core ethos of the organization and leadership, what follows from that, and this is a very interesting phenomenon, we don't see values. We cannot see values. We can't look at a person and see their worldview. We can't see their style. We can't see their IQ. When we look at people, what we see is behaviors. Behaviors are the things that they actually do. So there's a great book called On Corporate Culture by Cotter and Heskett, where they talk about the relationship between values and behaviors. And so I created a thing called expected leadership behaviors. We're going to build the corporate values, and then we're going to build the behavior statements that demonstrate those values. And we build that into the hiring process, and we built it into the performance management process, and we do leadership development to it. So now you have a direct line of sight between what we put on the website, what we hang on the wall, what we do in our training programs, how we hire people, how we performance manage them, and how we develop them. And if those behaviors aren't being lived, it's in the performance management document, and it's for every individual in the company. It's not for the line employees, it's not for the executives, it's for everyone. Now you have something that's visible and tangible, which is what behaviors are. So it translates the values into something that's visible and observable and measurable and attainable.
I love that. Tony, you have, that's incredible information. I hope I'm listening. I hope everyone else is listening. I have a book here. It's called Corporate Life Cycles by Ishak Thesis. And this is actually one of my favorite books. And I believe every leader needs to read it. Every consultant needs to read it. Every employee needs to read it. And it's the first thing I do when I talk with any organization is I try to figure out where they are in their corporate life cycle. Can you tease that out for us in a way that can help us understand what this is all, the essence of this book?
Okay, well, you didn't tell me you were going to break out the first edition, Joel, first of all. That's impressive. So I have to tell you, I bought that book because of the subtitle. I can tell you what the subtitle is. It's Corporate Life Cycles is the title of the book. The subtitle is How Organizations Grow and Die and What to Do About It. And I bought that book the second I read the subtitle. It was fantastic. I bought it, I read it, and I love the book so much. I did what I often do, which is I called the author, Dr. Ishak Thesis. I called him and I said, hey, I really want to talk to you about your book. And he said, oh, what edition are you talking about? I said, this is the one I have. He's like, no, I'll send you the new one. We have a new book, and it's called Managing Corporate Life Cycles. And so I'll tell you what Ishak said to me. That was my first conversation with him. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with him over a period of several years. He said, Tony, I had to rewrite the book. He has a very heavy accent, so I'll stop doing that now. But he said, I had to rewrite it. So I went from Corporate Life Cycles, which was basically written for engineers, to Managing Corporate Life Cycles, which was written for executives. So it had much smaller words and a lot more pictures. And he wasn't joking. So Managing Corporate Life Cycles is the one you want to read because it's much easier with smaller words. I'll tell you the other thing that he said to me, though. January 2nd of 2013, I flew out to Santa Barbara to meet with Ishak. I'd worked with him back in the 90s. An amazing individual, an incredibly brilliant man, and very generous, and I was thrilled to get to work with him. I took my copy of Managing Corporate Life Cycles with me because I wanted him to sign it, because I didn't have him sign it when we were working together. And so I took the book out of my backpack and I opened it up, and it looked like I'd been working with it for 15 years because I had. And he's like, what did you do to my book? You destroyed my book. And he said, I love it. I'm so happy that you ruined it because you've been working with it. He's like, I'm going to take pictures of this and send it to all my friends and show them how happy I am that you ruined the book. And then I said to him, I said, Ishak, I've been working on the 18th chapter ever since we worked together. And he looked at me and he did this. Said the 18th chapter was the whole point of the book.
Wow.
Nobody ever reads it. because they don't read that far. They get to the part of the cycle where they are and they go, okay, I made it to where I am, and they stop. The 18th chapter is called The Optimal Path.
Uh-huh.
And the optimal path is about how we utilize mutual trust and respect, which people think are soft skills, and they're not soft skills. They're the hardest thing you can do, is building trust and respect. It's how we use trust and respect to build a communication and decision-making system that allows us to skip over many of the normal problems of the life cycle. He said, if I had the time, I would go back and I would redo the book and I would make it the first chapter, and then everybody would read it. It was the most important chapter. So what you talked about is the life cycle tells us what problems are normal for what stage we're in. I was meeting with a group of executives yesterday. I took them through the life cycle. We talked about this, and I said, if I tell you that my kid spend all of their time crying and wearing diapers and they have to be fed all the time, how old would you think they are?
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably an infant. Well, what if I told you they were 16? Like, oh, wow, that's a really big problem. That's not normal. That's not okay. Something's gone on for too long.
Yeah.
And so to your point, it immediately helps you understand how to diagnose the behavioral problems in an organization, because there are a set of problems that are completely normal for every stage of the life cycle. And so if you're in that stage and those are your problems, you have to realize that it's okay to have those problems and you don't need to solve all of them.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of building organizations is not to solve all the problems, is to know which ones are the critical few. And you cannot do that without understanding what stage of the life cycle you're in. So it's a great question. I hope I eventually got to the answer that you were looking for, but that's really what it is. If, when your kids are 10, you're not trying to teach them how to drive a car. That's not the solution for that stage of the life cycle. So at every stage, there are appropriate solutions that help you get to the next stage. Here's the other problem. What people don't realize is that your reward for solving problems is bigger problems that come at you faster, that are more complex, that need quicker solution. Right? Yeah. Because the average attitude is, I just want the problems to go away, and I want to be like those people over there. They're lucky people. They don't have any problems. I want to be like those people. Well, those people are in a graveyard.
They don't exist.
Only people without problems are in the graveyard. Mm-hmm. So death is the only time we have no problems. So thinking that problems are going to go away, or ignoring them, or hiding from them, or just hoping that if we don't do anything about them, things will get better, those are all the wrong mindsets around problem solving. And the life cycle exposes all of that thinking.
That's terrific. I was with an organization once that they had 19 people. They were just launching. They were in the go-go phase, and they had one guy who was the creator of this app for medical systems, and everyone else is in sales, marketing, that type of person. I was able to help them early on to know that if you've got 5 people for a particular job, you can then look at through the personality realm to see if they're more administrative type people, because you're going to need those in order to go to the next level. And I had the leader, the president of the organization, CEO, he called me up about, I'd say 5-6 years later, and he said that was the best advice that he ever had. And I give credit to Iksha, because he's the one that made that come alive in my mind. I hadn't thought about that quite that way before.
That's a great way to think about it. And a simple example would be, when you're a go-go organization, it is all about action orientation, and you want people who show up and work hard every day, and that's great. But as you grow and you start to get to the point where you get bigger, what you need is organization. So you need some people who are all into procedures and processes and slowing down and documenting things. That's the exact opposite of action orientation. Yeah. So that is to create a cultural rift, which is why that mutual trust and respect component is the thing that gives you the grease to get through that conflict and tension like we talked about earlier.
When you got a bunch of kites flying high, you need a bunch of string holders to keep them grounded, right?
Well, we got to respond to Rodney.
Yeah, Rodney. Sorry. While AI accelerates productivity and breaks down information silos, it simultaneously risks compromising informal social networks, leading to potential employee loneliness and a greater need for intentional, empathic leadership. Can you comment? We have about 4 minutes left.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Rodney. Appreciate the comment. I agree with your statement. I think this I think you could take this statement and combine it with the advent of remote work, and you really start to see that problem. So there's a good friend of mine named David Horsager who just wrote a book sort of aimed at that challenge called Trust at a Distance. And the employee loneliness, the separation, the lack of cohesion, the lack of teamwork, the lack of camaraderie. I think you're right about AI accelerating that, as well as other issues. And the remote situations that a lot of people in only make that even worse. So I think it's a great point. Unfortunately, intentional and empathetic leadership are not in abundant supply in most organizations. So you're right about the need. It needs to become a more important topic and more something that's a higher priority for CEOs. But, unfortunately, a lot of the people problems just tend to get ignored a lot of times.
Thank you so much. Now, what personal cost comes with being a person willing to just to challenge the status quo?
So I had a call with a client today, and she said, my friend is really annoyed with you. I was like, do I know your friend? No, but I'm always telling them what you say, and they just don't like it. Like, why are you telling them what I say? Because I like it. Well, then say it's what you're saying. So, there's a real impact. I would rather speak the truth in love than not speak the truth. But there is absolutely an impact and a cost that comes with that. So, there have been many times where I've been the villain in somebody's psychodrama, or the person like, why did you do this? You took our organization and you put us through all this pain. I mean, there's always people who aren't happy about change, whether it's positive or negative. And so you a lot of times become, the fall guy or the person who gets blamed, or, there's a lot of negativity that comes your way with that. I've got more than a few arrows in my back, and it's part of the price of leadership in general, but especially if you're going to be vocal and you're brought in as a driver of change. It's part of the price, and I hate it, but it's real. And I just come to grips with that's better than keeping my mouth shut and not doing what I believe.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, if you don't take it personally, you can use that in some way. It's like a couple counseling where they're going to get a divorce, and then you kind of tick off both parties, and then they're going to prove you wrong in some way. Maybe there's some way to utilize that.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end. How do you measure success when you're working with an organization?
Great question. For me, there's really two things. Number one, in all my experiences, Joel, every organization I've worked in, the goal is unleashing potential that nobody has been able to unleash before that. And so you do that by unleashing the potential in individuals. So there's an interdependency there. You can't unleash the potential of the organization without unleashing the potential of the individuals. The impact of that to the organization in terms of the makeup of the culture and what it feels like to be there and what it feels like to be a customer, and then what happens consequently in terms of growth and success. Those are sort of the byproducts of it. Mm-hmm. So for me,
about 20 seconds.
Success is, do we impact the organization where people's lives are improved? Mm-hmm. If you do that, you're going to see those downstream effects every time. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you so much. The clock keeps ticking. It's gone by far too quickly. How can people get a hold of you?
Diekemper Consulting and Training.com.
Diekemper Consulting
and Training.
And Training.com. We're going to have that on the link tree. People will see your face and smash it gently, but you'll be taken to his website, and please reach out to him. If you need a speaker, if you need someone to help your organization, or you know of someone who needs help, reach out to Tony. You'll be glad you did.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride.